Hi, this is Roger, and I'm going to give a data overview for Oglethorpe County Middle School. This presentation is intended for the OCMS faculty. The purpose of this data overview is to take a look at the CRCT content data results. We'll be looking at students at or above proficiency on the CRCT. We'll be focused on 8th grade students in years 2012 through 2014. And that will be referred to as years 1, 2, and 3 in the presentation. Now, since we are the only middle school in the district, we'll just be comparing our results to state results. We'll also take a look at the 8th grade writing assessment compared to our CRCT language arts results and identify any strengths or weaknesses found in the data. So first of all, taking a look at our total enrollment. So this is the enrollment for grades 6, 7, and 8. You can see we're a fairly small middle school compared to other middle schools in the state. We average around 540 students, and you can see our enrollment in years 1, 2, and 3 took a slight dip and then started increasing again. Our white student population kind of followed that trend. Our African American student population actually increased slightly. Our Hispanic population decreased slightly and then leveled out over years 2 and 3. So taking a look at our 8th grade enrollment over years 1, 2, and 3, you can see that the enrollment took a slight dip and then increased. And that was the case with our white student population in the 8th grade, whereas our African American student population and our Hispanic population, both of those populations decreased slightly over those 3 years. And taking a look at the enrollment, total enrollment side by side with the 8th grade enrollment, you can see that the 8th grade, total 8th grade students, they follow the trend of the total enrollment as far as slight decrease and increase. And as with our white student population, they did the same. And as I said, the African American population actually, whereas it increased slightly in the total enrollment in 8th grade, that slightly decreased, as well as our Hispanic population. Now, for the purposes of this presentation, I'm going to be looking at our targeted subgroups. Now, these were the subgroups that were looked at in our school improvement plan. And so we're going to look at our white student population, our African American student population, and I've added in here our students with disabilities. So you can see that enrollment slightly decreased in year 2 and then increased again in year 3. And this is for our 8th grade. This is in our 8th grade. So those will be the subgroups we'll look at for our CRCT data. Now, starting with our CRCT reading, just looking across the board here, across the graph, you can see that reading is a strong area for us. We'll be talking later about some of the reasons for this after I go over the language arts results. Now, you can see in year 1 we did have a significant achievement gap between our students and our students with disabilities. But that achievement gap decreased over years 1, 2, and 3. And in fact, our African American population and students with disabilities both reached 100% at or above proficiency on the reading portion of the CRCT in year 3. So a lot of work done there and decreasing that achievement gap. And you can see compared to the state results and all students in 8th grade, we're either right at that year 2, slightly under, but only about 1 percentage point. But in year 3, our students were actually 2 percentage points above the state average for the reading CRCT. So again, a strong area for us. Now, the CRCT language arts in some ways mirrors the reading. Our results were good. We were right at the state averages and slightly above in year 3. We did have the achievement gap in year 1 with the students and students with disabilities, but that achievement gap decreased. Now, in year 3, we did drop slightly in language arts. I believe there were some content changes, standards changes that may account for that, but that's something that we would want to look at the data and look at the standards and what was going on to see what the cause of that might be. Now, as far as the language arts and reading, one thing that has helped our school tremendously, and about 10 years ago we went to a block schedule, and our students get an hour and a half of reading and language arts every day. So that has really helped improve. Part of the reason why our results have improved, because they're getting more of that content. Now, looking at the 8th grade writing assessments in years 1, 2, and 3, you can see that the results are not quite as good as our reading and language arts on the CRCT. And again, we have that achievement gap. Now we have the achievement gap between our white student population, our African American population, and our students with disabilities. And that achievement gap has really not seen a change in those 3 years on the 8th grade writing assessment. Now, compared to the state, our students, our 8th grade students, did perform better overall than students across the state. So that is a strength there, but there is room for improvement. Okay, taking a look at the math CRCT, you can see by the results that we're not quite as strong in math as reading and language arts. We do have that achievement gap between our white student population and our students, African American student population, and our students with disabilities. Now in year 2, our students with disabilities scored at 92% at or above proficiency, but that dropped in year 3 to 53%. So that is something that we would really need to take a look at to see what was going on there that would cause that big of a drop in those results. Now you can see our African American population, their results did not really change much. They actually decreased over those 3 years. So again, that's something that we would need to take a look at. But again, comparing to the state, our students did perform slightly better overall than what the results show for the state. Okay, taking a look at science. Now, science is really one of our weak areas comparatively, especially compared to reading and language arts. We have a very significant achievement gap in year 1 between our white student population and our African American students and students with disabilities. And we really haven't closed that achievement gap too much. In fact, our students with disabilities went from 67% in year 2 to 33% in year 3. So that again is something that we would need to take a look at to see what we can do to close that achievement gap. Now, as in the other content areas, our students performed slightly better on average compared to the state results. Similar results with our social studies. Again, comparing to the state results, our students did perform slightly better overall. However, we still have that achievement gap between our white student population and our African American students and students with disabilities. Now in year 2, as with some of the other content areas, our students with disabilities perform better in year 2, but that percentage dropped in year 3. So, some significant achievement gaps there that we need to take a look at. So just recapping some of our strengths, we did increase the percentage of students at or above proficiency on the CRCT reading in years 1, 2, and 3. We did close the achievement gap in reading and language arts between all students and students with disabilities. We were at 100% at or above proficiency among African American students and students with disabilities in year 3 on the reading. The percent of 8th grade students at or above proficiency in reading and language arts was close to the state results and in some cases exceeded state results. The percentage of students at or above proficiency on the 8th grade writing assessment was above the state averages in those 3 years. and the percent of students that are above proficiency on the math, science, and social studies was above the state average for years 1, 2, and 3. Taking a look at some of the weaknesses, these are just some of the things that we need to work on. So there are a lot of opportunities here for us to incorporate some strategies to help with these results. The percent of students that are above proficiency was significantly lower in science and social studies, especially compared to our reading and language arts results. There was a significant achievement gap between white students, African American students, and students with disabilities on the 8th grade writing assessment. And there was a significant achievement gap between white students, African American students, and students with disabilities on math, science, and social studies. So those are things that we need to look at as opportunities for growth and areas where we can improve. So where do we go from here? So first of all, we continue the good work in reading and language arts. So apparently, we're doing a lot of good strategies, or have a lot of good strategies in those content areas. We need to continue that and continually look for ways to improve. We need to work on increasing our achievement in math. We need to work on closing the achievement gap between subgroups, especially in math, science, and social studies. Now, in the past few years, our professional learning has focused on reading and math. That's great, and we've seen results, especially in the reading aspect in our language arts. So we do need to start providing more professional learning opportunities specific to science and social studies. Now, in the past, it's been more of reading, language arts, and trying to incorporate those strategies into science and social studies, but we need things specific to those content areas. We need professional development that's focused on technology integration that could help with our student learning. Now, the 8th grade writing assessment is no longer used. This past year, 2015, it was not used, and Georgia Milestones is actually incorporating some writing into it. We did use something called WriteScore, software called WriteScore this year that is an assessment for writing. So we need to continue using that, so that will help us with our assessments of writing. And then, of course, once we get the Georgia Milestones results, we can compare that data to the CRCT and start looking at our areas that we need to work on, and, of course, our strengths as well. So I hope this has been informative, and I appreciate you taking the time to listen.